Hi everyone, welcome to PsychTalk with Takira. So today we're going to be discussing, does childhood maltreatment lead to risky alcohol and drug use, or is it just peer pressure and impulsivity? Well, in her article, Robin Ellis and her colleagues Samantha Awada, Holly Orcutt, and Elizabeth Shelby test if greater severity of childhood maltreatment predicts riskier alcohol and drug use, and specifically whether this relationship can be explained by post-traumatic stress symptoms and callous and emotional traits. In this study, they had 355 undergraduate students from a university in the United States take an online self-reporting questionnaire, which asked about childhood experiences, trauma symptoms, emotional traits, and of course, substance use behaviors. It's really important to note, though, before we go on, that these students were recruited through an online research participation system, and that students who did not report a history of childhood maltreatment were excluded from this study. All participation also took place remotely and voluntarily, and no in-person component was involved with this study. Whew! Now, with all that out of the way, let's go back to talking about how this study was carried out. There is a lot to unpack here, so let's just try to do this as quickly and simply as we can. So for this study, they used several standardized self-reporting questionnaires to measure their main ideas: childhood maltreatment, post-traumatic stress symptoms, callous and emotional traits, and risky substance use behaviors pertaining to drugs and alcohol. These questionnaires were completed online and produced numerical scores representing the severity of each characteristic or behavior. These were then recorded for their results. Speaking of the results, what did they find? Well, in their study, they state that PTSS and CU traits were found to fully mediate childhood maltreatment severity to risky alcohol use behaviors. This did not include risky drug use behaviors, only alcohol. This basically means that the link between childhood maltreatment and risky drinking was completely explained by trauma symptoms and these callous unemotional traits. This article was definitely interesting to read. However, like all studies, there are some strengths and some weaknesses worth noting. The three main strengths I noticed in the study was that they had a large sample size, they used advanced statistical modeling, which I won't get into too much, but basically it's a really accurate way of recording data. And they also addressed a really important public health concern, which probably reached the minds of many people. Some weaknesses that I found mainly had to do with the questionnaire, which was self-reporting. So people did have the ability to lie during this, which probably skewed the results. You know, people think it's funny, I'm just going to do this questionnaire, kind of mess with them a little bit. And then the people's memories may not have been very accurate. They might not remember their childhood experiences exactly the way that it happened back then. This could also skew the results a little bit and their data as well. So these are just some things worth noting. However, all of that set aside, this was still an insightful article to read. I highly recommend it. However, does childhood maltreatment actually lead to risky alcohol and drug use? I personally can't answer this question. This article provided a lot of insightful data and evidence, but just because of maybe, the reliability of, their findings, I just personally can't answer this. And, I feel like we've all dabbled in alcohol, maybe drugs, maybe some of you haven't. Good for you. But this is still an important question that I'm pretty sure a lot of us want to know the answer to. But thank you so much for listening. Let me know what you think. Bye.